Hi Lemon family! I've been wanting to do a cooking video for a very long time. Today we're gonna make calabasitas. It's just squash soup. Very spicy, or you can make it not so very spicy, either way. The way that I make it, most people can eat it. Even people who say that they don't like things that are spicy, they can still eat it. And I'll show you kind of what I do and how I put it together so that it doesn't, it's not overpoweringly spicy. Okay, so here are my ingredients. What I'm gonna do is start with some diced onion. It's about one medium-sized onion. I don't measure anything, and the reason why I don't measure anything is because my grandma never measured anything, and my mom and my grandmother taught me how to cook. So I just learned by, well, you just put onions in it. There's no particular amount. I just put a medium-sized onion. If I get another onion that is larger, then I put that. Garlic, that's the next thing. I prefer to use fresh garlic, but I had this chopped garlic in my fridge, and my fridge broke on me, so here I am trying to just use up my chopped garlic, but normally I prefer fresh. And jalapenos. Those are the first three ingredients that I'm going to start with. You can use more jalapenos, you can use less jalapenos, but I would recommend at least one chopped jalapeno just to give it a little bit of spice. And or you can use a half if you really don't like that much jalapenos. Also, if you can see, I chopped the jalapenos very, very small, and the reason for that is you get a much more even spice. You do not get like the crunches of spiciness that kind of kill you, and my kids eat it a lot better whenever it's like that, and most people do not complain about the spice whenever I use my chopped jalapenos. Okay, and then we have corn. You can use corn that you've taken off of the cob. You can use canned corn, but I usually like to use frozen corn. And then I have zucchini. I have green zucchini and yellow squash. I think I have about 3 zucchinis here, 3 whole zucchinis and 3 whole squashes. I'm gonna saute these 3 vegetables first, and then I'm gonna add in the zucchini and squash, and then I'm gonna do the corn, and I'll add a little bit of tomato paste, and even maybe I'll add in some canned tomatoes, depending on the coloring that I want for it. I'm gonna saute it all in butter. I know that that's kind of controversial for some people, but I use butter. And so we're gonna saute it in the butter. It gives it a buttery flavor, and it's really good. And then whenever I make the actual broth for the soup, I'm gonna use this bouillon, but you can actually just use chicken stock in it. But if you don't have that, then I use the Nord. And whenever I serve it with a little bit of Mexican cheese, some sour cream, and tortillas. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. I'm not gonna measure out the butter. I'm just putting some butter, healthy amount of butter in there. I have my pot. Unfortunately, I'm cooking on an electric stove. I don't really like electric stoves. I like gas stoves, but I'm cooking on a 6 right now on an electric stove. If you have a gas stove, you just want to cook on like a medium to medium high heat, just to get your vegetables nice and sauteed. I usually cook on a much higher heat than a lot of people do, just because, I don't know, it gets it nice and brown, nice and caramelized. Just tastes better. I don't mind if things are just slightly burnt. It gives it sort of I don't know, just a better flavor. I think normally I would put more onion than that, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to add the garlic. So now I have the onion, I have the garlic in here. I think I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit, probably on high. I'm going to turn it all the way up. Just because, like I said, I'm on an electric stove and it doesn't really heat up the best. Okay, now I am adding the jalapenos. Like I said, this is about 1 jalapeno. Gives off kind of a spicy smell, so you might want to use the fan because your whole family will end up coughing a lot because that's just how it is when you cook jalapenos. Let that saute just for a little bit. While the pan is kind of heating up, it'll get it nice and hot. And you want it to be really, really hot for whenever you add the zucchini and squash because they have a much higher water content. And that's why I do the jalapenos, the garlic, and the onion first, because if you do the zucchini and squash first, it'll kind of ruin your caramelization of your onions and all your other ingredients. So you want to just do these first, get them kind of golden colored. I may add a little bit more butter, a little bit more. I actually did this recipe on the news for the museum that I was working for in Tallahassee to promote I think a harvest day or something like that we were having at the mission, and it was really fun. I got to do this on the news, so that was really fun. I think the only thing was that one of the ladies who was supposed to get the supplies for the show, she couldn't find corn for some reason, and so she brought me corn nuts. Not the same thing. But that was the only little hiccup that we encountered. Okay, right here where they just start to turn brown, I'm going to start to add in my zucchini and squash. You can see the color is really nice now. I'm going to add it all like that, and I'm going to let it sit for a second so that it can actually, I'm going to go ahead and mix that in. And once you've kind of mixed it in with the onions, because the onions are on the bottom, you don't want the onions to burn too bad. So you add it, just let it sit so that it can brown. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and cut this zucchini, or I'm sorry, this squash. I cut it I'm going to cut it in 4 lengthwise, and then I'm going to take half of it. I'll put half there, and this half there, and then I'm going to cut it this way. Sorry, it's a little hard to do right now. These ones are kind of slippery, but I'm going to cut it that way. Usually do it a little prettier than that, but it doesn't really matter. And you're just going to cut them into cubes. So I found that this is the easiest way to get good-sized cubes out of it. If your kids don't like vegetables, this is a really good job to give them, to chop this up because it doesn't really matter if they mess these up, if they're not the same size or whatever. And they can chop through them pretty easily. And when they chop the vegetables, they're just a lot more likely. They're just a lot more likely to eat the actual vegetables that they cut up. Okay. Here we go. I'm just adding the last squash pieces, and I'm gonna mix it in. Now you can see we kind of left it alone even to burn a little bit on the bottom, and that's okay. It gives it a good flavor. Again, I have it on high. I'm just gonna mix it in and let it cook for a while longer. You don't want to move it too much because then it starts getting really wet on the bottom and it won't really saute it properly. And I want it to get nice and brown. I don't want it to really boil just yet. I want it to get kind of brown, which is a lot easier to do on a gas stove than it is on an electric stove. Okay, so now the zucchini and squash is getting kind of brown, and at this stage I'm going to go ahead and add my corn in and the tomato paste. I like to mix in the tomato paste with everything because it kind of also gets a little bit caramelized. I think I'll just put in all tomato paste instead of the canned tomatoes. So it's a whole mini can of tomato paste, a mini can. Let's go ahead and put all that in. And again, I still have it on high. So I really like to have the zucchini and squash a little bit more browned than this normally, but it just depends on your preference. Again, I don't have any exact recipe because, like I said, this is how my family cooks food, is just kind of putting it all together. This also is just one pot, and I think this whole meal, the entire meal, maybe cost about $10, and this should feed our family of 5 for at least 2 days, maybe longer depending on what's going on. But yeah, so that's $5 a day for a family of 5. That's really good. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just still sauteing it. This is so good because if you see, I've kind of burnt some of the tomato paste to the bottom just a little bit. This is one of those things that you can cook while being a mom and go to the living room and get the kids or whatever, and you can even burn it just a little bit and it'll be just fine. In fact, it's better if it's just a little bit burnt on the bottom. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and add my bouillon. Like I said, I'm adding the North Suiza, but you can add the chicken broth if you want, and it just gives it a really good flavor, kind of finishes it off. I'm going to go ahead and add my water, or like I said, you can add bouillon, chicken broth, whatever you need to add. And then that just kind of finishes it off. Looks really good. It's a little soup. It's kind of really hearty, and Has lots of vegetables. If you do it with fresh vegetables, and it's really good. You can also grow these vegetables in your garden if you don't know what to do with your zucchini and squash, if you grow a lot of it. I know one year at the mission we just had tons and tons of zucchini and squash. We really didn't know what to do with it, so I just made this for everybody, and it was really good. Let it boil a little bit, and then you can actually serve it. Okay, so here it is, all prepared. There's a little bit of sour cream in there. That's really handy, especially if you have a child that is complaining that it's too spicy. You just put some more sour cream in it and it'll reduce the spice. I'm also adding taquito de crema, which is actually really good for little kids who just really won't eat a whole lot. You can just dip it in there and give it to them. It's really soft. If you have a baby, it's kind of a lot easier to feed them the taquito de crema first, and you just put a little bit of cream and a little bit of salt and it's ready to go. So next, Alex is going to try it out for us.
Can I try it?
Has vegetables in it, Javi. You like it? It's a little hot? Okay. What do you think, Alex?
Delicious.
Okay. What do you think, guys?
It's very delicious.
Okay. What do you think, Javi?
Stop with the crazy eyes, Javi.
What do you think?
Is it good, Javi? I think that's 1 minute.
You like it?
Yeah,
okay. Even though it has vegetables?
Even though it has vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Even though.